from like point A to point B.
Good morning. Welcome. This is the Tyler Liberty Partners Breakfast Meeting. And today we have a very special guest, George Allen, representing the plaintiffs on the lawsuit to change or alter rather, or make a final decision on how we will vote for elected officials and other issues such as referendum. And it's in the hands of the courts right now. And we're going to start off this morning with John Moss giving a chronology of it, and then followed by George Allen, one of the plaintiffs in that. And then we'll have a robust discussion. So welcome. Hey, Bill. Okay, Bill. John's going to do it. Huh? John's going to do the invocation.
Well, that's fine, but Georgia, I just talked to her, and she's the daughter of a preacher, and I'd rather have her.
Okay, all right, then
we rely too much on it.
John. Bill.
Yeah.
But that's the home
So I didn't realize it.
just like us.
So getting it that way is the most basic.
That's her sunning relaxation spot.
Right.
If it's warm, she likes to lay.
Someone's still going to make fun
I know the one I have here.
It's 10:05.
Yeah, I know. I'm waiting
No
on
matter where they've been,
Bill to come out of the
they gotta go
bathroom.
back into what is
He's been under the weather.
And she couldn't understand why.
Okay, Bill, we don't need that.
She was like looking at me like,
We don't need that. We have the. Oh, for the water? Oh, okay. Okay. Never mind. We're ready to go.
he ate the rest of it because he came late. Yeah, he cleaned. Because Eric and then Eric was, I don't know if he ever got anything.
Turn it on.
Now,
Yes.
good.
And then Vic came
Sorry about that.
later.
Well, good morning, everybody here and in the listening audience on Facebook Live. My name is Bill Duke, and I'm very happy to welcome you to the July 5th meeting, 2025. 2025. I forget. The meeting of the Tidewater Liberty Partners. And we're very lucky to have Georgia Allen as our guest speaker, and she has also agreed to give us an invocation.
Oh.
She's the daughter of a preacher. You'll learn more about her when John Moss introduces her. But for now, Georgia, please.
good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Loud enough that projects all of the.
Hey, Bill.
Yes.
But it'd be nice if you stand here so he doesn't have to move the camera around.
Okay.
This is live. That's why we need the mic. Bill.
Good morning.
Good morning.
If all hearts are open and all minds are clear, let us go to our Heavenly Father in prayer. Most merciful Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come together on one of the We ask, oh Heavenly Father, that you would bless this audience, bless our hearts and minds, that what we do, what we say, how we act, and how we treat one another is always pleasing to you. I pray this in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
And Al, were you going to
No,
lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Very good.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Start your Someone would like to say.
Yeah, there is.
I think it's Tom.
Tom viewing.
All right, now, we don't do enough to recognize how much we benefit from the presence here weekly of John Moss. He is a force of nature. He's very tall.
That's relative.
And he knows everything inside out, which is really terrific. It's everything political with Virginia Beach. I would say that. So, but really, John, thank you so much. We rely on you for so much, and we don't thank you often enough.
That's right.
We're really lucky to have you here.
Amen.
Yes, we are. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Thank you, John Moss. Thank you, John.
My kids do. That's true. Your wives and your wife, I'm not Mormon, your wife and your kids do keep you humble and do keep you at your place. That is true. Well, George and I go way back. I think we go back before there was, back to the county days, right?
John Perry.
Yeah, that's right. I ran with John Perry.
Yep.
He was the first African-American black ever elected to city council, and he's the oldest person ever to be elected for the first time, and he was a history or government teacher at Kinsville High School. And his wife was, his daughter was Becky Liveless, a radio personality, maybe you remember her, and his wife was a real charmer. I can't remember her name, but that goes with age. But since George and I both go back to pre-Virginia Beach, I thought before I introduced her, I would cover a little bit about where we were and how we got to be where we're at. Well, back in the days of Sidney Kellum, the Kellum machine, right along there with the Bird machine, to avoid Norfolk and Portsmouth annexation thing, they snuck a bill in through the General Assembly by some gentleman in Southwest Virginia, and no one noticed it. And the next thing you know, we had the city of Chesapeake, the city of Suffolk, the city of Virginia Beach, and Portsmouth and Norfolk were landlocked, and Virginia Beach had to come up with an election system. Interesting enough, when you go back to Brock, and I researched this, so this isn't editorialized on my part, originally the thought was we were going to have an 11th system, but it was going to be a district system, interestingly enough. But you can imagine per Brock, the people who didn't like that were the resort people and the business community who thought that would be too parochial. So the compromise was they created 7 districts. The city was mostly farmland at that time. So they created the District of Pungo, which only had about 400 residents at the time, and they got a council member. So only one of 400 people could even run. And then they had the Pungo Borough, which had about 4,000 people. And then they created the other districts. And so the compromise was there would be residency requirements, making sure the rural community couldn't be outvoted, but that all at large, meaning the larger part of the city and the special interest, which I'll let Jordan talk about, could make sure who that person was. So that was the compromise that lasted. There was a court case in 1967 changing that did not comply with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which had been voted on since 1963. That survived judicial review. The population of the city at that time wasn't probably sufficient. I'm not going to get into all that court case, but nonetheless, it prevailed, and we kept our system, and the court case was, and that was Judge Jackson, in fact. And I think George remembers that. Well, then we roll around, we get up to 2017, the Holloway case was filed. The population of the city had changed, a lot of dynamics had changed. They filed their suit, and in October of 2020, that trial took place. Now, predating that trial was a vote for a referendum. I don't know if people voted yes, along with Lewis Jones and the Patriots, but Bobby Dyer, who's now in favor of referendums, voted against that particular thing. That was in August of 2020. So you get the decision was announced by the judge in December in favor of the plaintiffs. And then he appointed a gentleman from California, Dr. I forget his name now at the moment, but from California to be a master. He drew the 10 districts. The city and the plaintiffs agreed in January, February timeframe on those districts, and then he ordered its implementation. The city then appealed to the Fourth Court of Appeals. I remember sitting in on that in the pavilion at the convention center, excuse me, dates my time, in the convention center when the oral arguments during COVID, so no one could be present, but we listened to it on the phone. In August, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals issued their opinion, ruling that the decision was moot. That's because when Governor Northam and the Democrats controlled the General Assembly, they passed two bills. A Holloway Amendment, which said any system that had a district system at all had to have them elected only by the people in that district. And then they passed the Voting Rights Act of 2021, which basically put a burden of proof on any at-large system that it didn't work to the disadvantage of opportunity groups, was the words they used, not minorities, but opportunity groups was the key phrase. And then, lo and behold, we had an election, and they issued that opinion in August, after it was too late for anyone to change the ballot. That's when it came out. So we had an election in 2022, and off we went. Then turn the clock around. We're now in November of 2023, right? So now the plaintiffs and the city wrote a memorandum in September of 2023, and submitted to the court saying these are the things that we are going to do. Because remember, this is a key thing. The judge, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, did not dismiss the case. They maintained the standing of the plaintiffs to re-enter into court if the city moved off the 10-1 system. I think that's fair. And so then, that's what we went. So the city did the two things. They adopted the ordinance, and they submitted the bill to the General Assembly. I'll let Georgia talk about that part of it. And lo and behold, there we go. But the city decided to sponsor a referendum. The plaintiffs said, hey, you're breaking the terms of your agreement, which they did. You can't, that's a factual fact. So therefore, Judge Jackson vacated the dismissal of the case, and the Holloway Georgia Allen case was reinstated in effect. And now we will be litigating whatever happens. If we have a 7-3-1 system or even a 10-1 system, we'll still be back in court. So from there, I think that's a pretty good summary. So I'm going to stop there. I gave a copy of all the details to Georgia. So that's all from Brock. You can look it up. But Georgia Allen has been a force for, I would say, the disenfranchised, including myself often, in the city of Virginia Beach. She's been our past president of the NAACP, and she's been active in the community, always trying to give, I think, a voice to those who have had no voice on the council. I think we did correct that in a big way, and now she's going to tell you how we're going to maintain that everyone has a voice and not just the people who can contribute a lot of money to campaigns. Georgia Allen, it's my pleasure to welcome you here this morning.
Yes.
And you don't have to sing that song. I'm a daughter of a preacher man.
Or Georgia on my mind. That's mine. Yeah.
But you did it great. Very good.
All right. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Okay. John gave a detailed background, which I always expect him to do. I've watched him on City Council for a number of years. I watched him on, then off, then back on again. So we are familiar with one another. And he's absolutely right. I think in 1963, when we became a city, we had 84,000 citizens. 84,000. That's right. Wow. We are now at over 400,000 citizens. Back then, we had 11 members on our city council. Today, we still have 11 members on our city council. I thought it was kind of interesting that he would mention that, wow, I think we should have more members on city council. And when I looked at the numbers in the city of Virginia Beach over the years, because just like John, I like to go back and take a look at what things look like. Okay, and like I said, in 1963, we had 84,000 citizens. In 1970, we had 172,106 citizens. By the time we got to 1990, we had 393,089 citizens, approximately, because they don't get every single solitary person. So I like to say that because people say, well, that's what she said, okay? Yeah. And yes, it is. But keep in mind, numbers are not always exact. Guess what? When they did the census, another baby may have been born, but they had already presented the census, okay? Then in 2020, we had 459,470 people. And then now, today, we're down to 457,347. And that number fluctuates up and down. Okay? This is John's speech. John, you gave me all those papers. So now I gotta find what I was gonna say today. To the Liberty Partners or Liberty Party? Partners, okay. All right, good morning, Tidewater Liberty Partners. Again, I am Georgia F. Allen, a lifetime resident of Virginia Beach in old Princess Anne County. And because I am from here, I remember old Princess Anne County very well. I had lived here, of course, throughout the 1950s up until today. Most of the time, it has been right here in Virginia Beach, but I have traveled a little. I've lived overseas. I lived in Northern Virginia, and I lived in New York. But the bulk of my time has been here in Virginia Beach. Okay. We also recognize that we are military town. This pen don't say what it needs to say so I can make my check marks when necessary. Okay. We also recognize that we're a military town, we're a resort town, and so we have a very, very diverse community. We have people from probably every state in the Union, plus Canada and Greenland. Excuse me. I wanted to not be boring, okay? These topics sometimes can be a little boring. But yeah, we have people represented from all 50 states. And we even have people from Canada. I don't know about Greenland, but I'm sure we have people from Canada here. We also have several U.S. territories who have U.S. citizenship, and they speak various languages. Being that this is a military town, Virginia Beach probably has residents from everywhere, okay? Because that's the way it is. The Term 1 election system did not change overnight. As John, talked to you about and gave you a mild history of it, it wasn't an overnight change. In 1994, a referendum was placed on the ballot, and this is how the question read. Should the City Council request the General Assembly to amend the city's existing councilman electoral plan to provide for division of the city into 7 districts of approximately equal population, with 7 members to be elected only by the voters of their respective districts, and 3 members and the mayor to be elected from the city at large. And guess what? The citizens said yes. However, there were some state elected officials from Virginia Beach who did not like the people making their own decisions. And John is familiar with this. They didn't like that. So this group of General Assembly members decided to go back to the General Assembly with an advisory referendum in 1996 with new wording for approval. Wording, of course, a little bit confusing. So this question says, shall the city council member elected to represent a particular borough be elected by all qualified voters throughout the city, which is in quotes, an at-large system, rather than only by the qualified voters residing in that particular borough, a ward system? If you wish to vote for all 11 council members, vote yes. If you prefer to vote for 5 of the 11 council seats, vote no. Kind of confusing, right? Yeah. Very. That was the intent. So the wording of the referendum was one confusing, and the people voted for the 1996 referendum, which the city quickly put in place. Imagine that. When the citizens voted for what they wanted, they had to wait before they could put it in place and implement it. So the power brokers used legalese, which confused the citizenry, and instead of the citizens getting the voting system that they preferred, they voted against their interests. And this happens a lot. You know, you get a little quick slogan, a soundbite, a little bit of rhetoric, and then all of a sudden, you thought you were voting for one thing when in fact you voted for another. And so what ultimately happened is they voted against their interests, which the legislation created a system that they did not prefer. In essence, confusing language gave Virginia Beach residents the 731 hybrid voting system. This hybrid voting system mandated that a person must live in their district to represent their district while simultaneously allowing the entire city to vote for all representatives. So therefore, they really didn't have a district system. They simply had an at-large system that claimed it was a district system. This created situations where the citizens of a district could vote overwhelmingly for the person of their choice, as the rest of the city got paid to vote for someone that the special interest chose. Yes, they lived in their district, but it wasn't the citizens' choice in that particular district to have this person be elected to office. So, this brings us to 2017. Miss Latasha Holloway. I really didn't know her at first, but she was very upset about how she was treated. Her children were having some concerns in school. If anybody has any children who may have, and I hate using the word disabled, but have any children and may have any type of inabilities, okay, you may find yourself trying to navigate this system within the school. And so she was running into all types of problems. She'd go to who she thought was her school board member, who was probably not the district choice. Probably somebody from outside had paid a bunch of money, poured it into the school board race, and she ended up with someone who would not represent her concerns. She did it again. Went to city council members, trying to find city council members that could represent her interests. And over again, she ran into a brick wall. And finally, she said, enough. I want a system that represents all citizens. All citizens. And so therefore, she went ahead and she did the lawsuit so that all taxpayers in the city of Virginia Beach could have full representation. And later on, she started it in 2017, and I came on board in 2018. And we went to bat with the city. Because we understood that the Voting Rights Act of 1965 intended for everybody to have representation. Full stop. Everybody to have representation, not just special interests, not just the power brokers, not just all the people that have the big money, but it was intended to ensure that all persons had full representations. So, when you have a lawsuit, there are a couple of things. You gotta have, in many instances, you gotta have expert witnesses coming from both sides. Both sides have the opportunity to bring their own personal witnesses to testify on their behalf. And so all of this goes into a federal court to determine if the city of Virginia Beach has a legal or an illegal voting system. And it was proven. They never followed the Voting Rights Act. They became a city in 1963. The Voting Rights Act came into place in 1965, and they never bothered to follow it. They just maintained that 731 hybrid system. So, with the lawsuit, there has to be a remedy, correct? Right. The winners should get a remedy. So in this case, the judge ruled in the favor of the plaintiffs, and the remedy that he decided on was that instead of just getting the city to put together a new voting system, or the plaintiffs put together a new voting system, he says, well, let's have a special master, someone who is a professional person that has looked at districts all around the country. Let's let him look at the city of Virginia Beach, look at its dynamics, look at its socioeconomic demographics, look at the age, look at the youth, look at all of this. And so what they did is the special master said, look, we can find 3 opportunity districts if we redraw this, the voting, if we redraw the lines, and if we make it a 10 single-member district system, which we all thought that would be a great idea. But lo and behold, some people, some of these folks who absolutely never has anything good to say about the other cities decided they wanted super wars. Can you believe that? Virginia Beach want to follow after another city in the Hampton Roads area with wars and super wars? I was like, am I dreaming? Is this real? And so this new district line system allowed us to have influence districts to ensure that all citizens had the opportunity to run for office, but of course get elected to office. And why is this important? Because everybody pays taxes into the city coffers. Therefore, everyone is entitled to representation. So, how does the 10-1 system work for all of us? How does it work for all of us? Well, most of the people in this room worth at least $30 million. Most of y'all are. You don't have to raise your hand. Most of you are, right? Or you have a business that brings in that type of money, somewhere around $30 million, right? Good. Good. We want to see people. Okay. So we know that elections cost money. John has been able to run for office a number of times without having to pay a tremendous amount of money. But I went back and I looked at a lot of the people, even someone like Barbara Henley down in the country. It was over $100,000 that she raised in the last election. She got, 30-some% of the vote? Didn't get 50% of the vote. She got 30-some% of the vote after raising over $100,000. In district size of 48,000 people. It's almost hilarious. $100,000 to get 30-some% of the vote. It just makes no sense that elections are this expensive. And I know you guys, being the libertarians or the Liberty Party, you don't like wasting tax dollars, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. Okay. So, neither do I. Every time I would go before city council, what was the things that I always asked for? Integrity, ethics, and good stewardship. Correct?
Amen.
Is that not what I asked for? We want our council members to not be beholden to special interests, big money, developers, any of those things. We wanted people to have the opportunity to raise money to run for office without feeling like they are pressured to support a special interest when it goes against their integrity, their ethics, or their mindset with regards to stewardship. So, let's talk about the 10-1 election system. This election system makes more fair districts. The districts are pretty much evenly divided. It allows people, regardless of how rich you are, how poor you are, the opportunity to run. And I tell people this story. I said, look, I'm in my 70s. I can get to 48,000 people, okay, if I wanted to run for office. And I'm in my 70s. So I know my younger people who are in their 20s and 30s, if they decided that they wanted to run for office, that would be a piece of cake for them to be able to go and tell people what they stand for, tell them why they are a good candidate for that district. And then, hopefully, most of them have been doing something in the district before they decide to run for office. That's the other thing. We have had people plucked out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, they're bringing them before you and saying, oh, this is your candidate in District 4, or District 7, or District 10, or District 1, 2, and 3. But you don't know them. But you do know people in your community who go to school board meetings, who go to city council meetings, who speak out on issues that pertain to your district. You do know those people, right? Okay. Are those the type of people that you would rather have in office? Okay, good. Because those are the type of people that I too would rather have in office, because that was the biggest frustration. The other thing is the 10-1 district system, of course, because it's less expensive to run, even though some people go overboard in raising funds and stuff. If you're really engaged in your particular district and the people know you, you know them, the chances are you will probably be their choice. Most of the time. Maybe not all the time, but the chances are you would probably be their first choice. The other thing that really bothered me is the amount of money our city has been spending on these lawsuits.
Amen.
This is outrageous, okay? They first said, well, we don't like it because the judge ruled against the city. Well, if you have followed the Voting Rights Act, you've had plenty of time from 1963 to 2017. That was 28 years. It's 28 years to decide that you will follow the rule of law. Most people in here believe in the rule of law, correct? You believe in the rule of law. Many of you are ex-military, okay? And so you've served the country, and you say, well, because I've served the country, I expect my government to work correctly for me. Is that not right? Okay, we just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. So, and what we found is just being a taxpaying citizen, it did not seem to be enough. Being a good citizen who worked and volunteered, I don't know about all of you, but I can't tell you how many times I have volunteered in this city over the years here. And I have volunteered for everything, from American Cancer to diabetes to city council, have all these city committees and stuff, and I've served on the different committees in the city of Virginia Beach for no pay. My gas is not paid for, none of that is paid for, but I serve because this is my city and I love my city. And so it just is very disturbing that somehow the city does not seem to respect the tax dollars that we give to them. John, like myself, both believe that there should be districts. And some people are like, well, 10 districts? I don't know if I'm going to have representation with 10 districts, because before I had those at-large seats. They didn't represent you. They represented the big guys. But those extra seats, they were of no real value to the regular citizens. I hate that word, regular. They were not of real value to the rest of us. They weren't. The reality is those seats were not necessarily of value to us. And so that also was a big, major concern. I wish I had that table instead of this one. This one's too small. But,
You move it.
yes.
You want to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
This table is too small, and I have some other supporting stuff in this lot.
Rotate that camera.
Yeah, I'm just gonna move to that table. Richard, just move the table. Yeah.
Just move the table.
Well done. All right, that was a pregnant pause there, folks. Listen, I can be a comedian sometimes, just a little bit, not too much. I try to keep it clean. Okay. There were a number of things that took place when the city, when we sued the city. And most of you, if you know me, even though I'm very vocal about the things that I'm passionate about, and it could be my community, or it could be other communities as well, but I don't go running around the whole city saying, oh, I sued the city of Virginia Beach. That's not me, okay? I'm looking for, I call it a return on my investment. I live in the city, I invest in the city, I spend in the city, I own a home in the city, and so I'm paying quite a few tax dollars to this city. So therefore, I want to have a very good city. Things that was important to me with this lawsuit was smaller district sizes. I didn't want people to have to run in the city of over 400,000 people. I wanted them to have a district size that was manageable. So the 48,000 worked for me. Also, I wanted everybody to have a fair opportunity. Let's see, some of you people probably have children, correct? Maybe are not worth $30 million. Can't put that type of money into a campaign. But perhaps your son, your daughter, has a small business. And that business has now gotten to the size that they don't have to go in every day. And so they're now freed up to be able to run for office. Do you really want them to have to go and beg these people for money to help them get elected? Or would you rather see them work with their community and run and get elected to office on their own merit? I hear that word all the time. Oh, merited qualifications. Oh, merited qualifications. I have never seen so many unqualified people on all levels of government in my entire life. So I would like to get back to real merit and real qualifications, where people are coming from your own community, you know them, you know how hard they work, you know how much they care about this district, and you know that when they get on that council, they're not going to be swayed every time somebody dangle a piece of cheese in front of their face. They're going to stand firm on their principles, and they're going to stand firm on what each one of you have asked them to do. And that's what we want on city council. Now, are we going to get it the first time around? No. The second time around? No. But guess what? We have a district system in place that will allow us to do what? Remove and what? Replace. And that's what we were looking for. We were looking for the ability to remove and replace these people, because a lot of people will get on that council and you can, I don't care if you bring a doggone sledgehammer, they're there almost for life. And that is very, very frustrating to those of us who are out here in the community with our families, and we know people in our neighborhoods that are far more qualified than many of the people on every level of government. And so we want that back. Okay, the other thing about this 10-1 voting system, it was an unbiased study, which we the taxpayer paid for, because they said, well, okay, well, I'm not real crazy about what the judge said. So let's go and get UVA, reputable college, at least I thought it was, the UVA Weldon Cooper Center, consultants, contracted, gathered in-person information, spoke to all 10 districts, then put out 3 additional opportunities online for people to call in, voice their concerns, voice their support, and let us know what election system were they more satisfied with. The 10-1 or the 7-3-1? 81%, that's every demographic in the city of Virginia Beach. They looked at the older people on Social Security that were scared we're going to lose right now. They looked at all of them. They looked at our young people who were just voting. They looked at every race. They looked at every creed, every color, everything possible. 81%. So they couldn't say, well, oh, she's just doing that just for one group of people. Well, she's doing that for this. Because everybody pretty much said the same thing. 81% said that they would prefer that we have the 10-1 system over their previous unfair 7-3-1 district system. So, with that being said, we want to make sure when we go to the polling, and yes, I'm going to speak to going to polls and voting. You know why? Because it's an issue. It's not one political party or another political party. I'm a private citizen, okay? So let's be clear. This is about us having a voice. And if the person that was elected to office from your district is really not the person you want, find a replacement. Remove them. That's the value of not having to run citywide, is people now have the power. So, because it's less expensive to run, because they are smaller district sizes, we no longer have to do the citywide elections. This is not just fair for those who have been disenfranchised groups of people for decades and decades and decades. I believe that this is a fair process for everyone. Thank you.
Questions?
We will have another microphone.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
Just the one? Okay.
No, Bill.
Let me I'll bring it back to you. Questions?
We have them come up here.
Mr. Davis? Dr. Davis?
As a practical matter, as somebody, I share with Robert and with John the experience of running for office. I ran through the 14th Senate District, which coincidentally is about the same size as Virginia Beach in terms of population. You can't get the voters in a district that large to know your name for less than $500,000. A shoe leather campaign, which is what I tried to run, is simply impossible in a district that large. But you give me a district of 40,000 people, and I can guarantee you they will know my name, they will know what I stand for. You can do that with just yourself, a few volunteers, and enough money to print a few flyers. If, as long as we're running at large in a city the size of Virginia Beach, small parties, small groups, or people from a given district have no say, it will be a matter of who the Chamber of Commerce and the resort strip wants to support. Because they can fund $1 million campaign to run against you. And I know John and Robert were more successful raising money than I was, but I ran a campaign with $5,000, mostly mine, against a Republican opponent with $500,000. And I got 29% of the vote, but still, I never really had a chance. No small party or individual district is going to stand a chance until break it down to the point where a shoe leather campaign can work. And that means getting down to the smaller districts.
Did you want to comment?
Absolutely. I agree with you, because I ran for the House of Delegates in 2005 against, he was in there for 14 years, Leo Wardrop at the time I ran against him. And I didn't have any big money around me, okay? I ran on a shoestring budget. I got almost 40% of the vote as a first-time candidate in a, what they like to say, deeply red area, okay? But I knew that if I ran under, of course, delegates, you do have to declare a party, either independent Republican or Democrat. Well, I'm smart enough to know that if I told my community that I was running as a Republican, I wouldn't get any votes. Okay? So you recognize and you know who your support is. You recognize who your base is. And so, as you were saying, it's very difficult to run when you're trying to run in these huge, huge districts. But as people get more familiar with the 10-1 district, you're going to see more and more people in your individual districts that are working on your behalf. And so you have more of a chance. And as time goes on, am I correct, John? As time goes on, we will see we the people, whether it's Liberty Party, whether it's an independent party, or whomever, begin to take control back. Does anybody want to take control back of the city of Virginia Beach?
Oh, yeah.
Georgia, we need runoff of the top two to prevent the Barbara Henley thing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, did you want to say more? That's fine.
He's serving on 33.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? Okay. Matter of fact,
I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the current city council charter requires a 7-3-1 allocation. And the code of the General Assembly is modified by the Voting Rights Act, I think it was 2017, said that you had to have equal districts. There's been talk about a referendum on the ballot in November to determine what the city council feels that they need in support of one way or the other. So would you comment on the difference, the differences in interpretation of how many council members and what the allocation should be based on these different charters?
okay. Thank you. With regards to the districts, they want them to be of equal sizes as much as possible. With regards to what John is talking about, of course, to me, that is a real charter change because we will be asking for additional council members. Right now, the only thing we're doing is keeping our same 11 district members, keeping 11 members on our city council. That did not change. According to the Code of Virginia 24.2-311, number 8, line item E, in the event of a conflict between the provisions of a decennial redistricting measure and the provisions of the charter of any locality, the provisions of the redistricting measure shall be deemed to override the charter provisions to the extent required to give effect to the redistricting plan. One of the things that took place in this particular lawsuit is the lawsuit came at the time of redistricting. And so when the lawsuit, when the judge ruled on the lawsuit, by that time, the 2026 census had taken place, so it fell under the decennial redistricting. So all of this stuff with regards to the charter at this point is a formality. Number one, the original vote for the charter change was a 10-1 vote on city council. Again, John mentioned this. The city did not live up to what they said they were going to do. Am I correct, John?
Correct.
They were supposed to send the legislative package to Richmond and change the charter because it was a formality. Everybody, and what has happened is chaos was created by misinformation, disinformation, because they were trying to drag this out in the hope that they could add people to council that would go along with what the big guys wanted. That's what that was all about. The law stands, the code stands. the lawsuit and the ruling stands. Now, I don't know how much money you guys want to spend on lawsuits, but I would suggest that you do your due diligence and say to these guys that's sitting on city council, I don't care how much money you got in your campaign. I don't care who paid for you to get elected to office. I really don't care. Because we want to make sure that we, the people, vote and elect the person of our choice. And again, the good part about this is these districts are small enough now that if these guys aren't doing their job, we can do what? Remove and do what? Replace. Thank you.
Georgia, can I just make
I don't
one
think
comment?
that-
I want to say that here's something. This is important to this point.
We gotta get it.
I would like to give people credit.
The city attorney in the circuit court tried to use and vigorously defended 10-1, but the judge would not allow the use and introduction of the Voting Rights Act of 2021 as a defense of the 10-1 system. So it's not that our city attorney, representing the citizens, didn't vigorously defend, but that language that you mentioned, which I think is key, was not allowed as a defense of the city's position. And therefore, he ruled that only on the basis of that. And I think that is, I can't change it, I don't agree with it, but I'm not the judge. But I just want people to know here that the city attorney people did vigorously offer that as a defense for our decision, but it was disallowed.
In the state court.
State court.
State court.
That's right, and there's no reason for the city to appeal, because ultimately this is going to be resolved in federal court. But nonetheless, I just wanted people to know that the city really did defend and wasn't allowed that defense.
John, don't literally, if you, between you and Georgia, would you, I'm right here on the mic, Bill.
Oh, okay.
Could you all please clarify or clear up a misunderstanding about an issue that goes to the General Assembly, such as this issue? People are saying, well, it has to be unanimous. Could you please clarify this erroneous information?
First of all, the General Assembly doesn't even need the permission of the city to change the city's charter. Unlike the school board, the city council is a legislative government. It exists at the pure discretion of the General Assembly. They can change the charter. They changed it in the past. So, but when you don't want to do something, you create a threshold that you know that people can't meet, and therefore you use that as an excuse. But nonetheless, it's not an excuse. It's just what they don't want to do it. So there's no legal prohibition from the city General Assembly to unilaterally change the city's charter. A good example, we didn't ask for the Fowler Amendment. Now, the Fowler Amendment is general legislation, but they're now claiming that, they want to quickly, jump on that because it's the flavor of the month. Bottom line is, they really don't want a government that is truly accountable and removable easily by the public. Either that or they vote for the ability to remove people by petition, but we don't have that.
Tell us about the Fowler Amendment.
The Fowler Amendment was the bill that said general legislation means it only needs a majority vote. Special legislation, if it said Virginia Beach, would require 2/3 of both houses, says that any municipality or county that has a district resident requirement for a district, where that does exist, then only the voters of that district can elect that person, which would have meant our charter would have been overwritten by general legislation. But if you hear the people... No, it would have been 7-3-1, because we would have had to elect those 7 people only from their district. Our system before was, I could run in Bayside, but everybody gets to vote for the Bayside rep. I'll give you a good example. Lewis Jones, in the last election he ran in, God bless his soul, he wasn't elected by the people of Bayside, but he got a majority of the vote citywide, and so therefore he was the Bayside person. This would have changed, if that law had been in effect, or that charter change had happened, it would have been Brad Martin would have been the council member, not Louis Jones. Or going way back in time, the Balco Brigade, Al Balco, who was the first Lynn Haven person who wasn't voted in by people in Lynn Haven, but that's not who they wanted, so citywide, Al Balco lost, and that led to the equal district issue. And so there's a lot of things there, but the bottom line is, people who have power don't like to share it. Let's just be honest. This is about better sharing of power.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay. John did so well because he's been an elected official. I'm just a community official. And so the things that I do on behalf of the community. Did you have a question?
Well,
Come
yes.
on over here.
Bill, over here.
There's another lawsuit that I guess is going to be resolved very soon, and it was brought by a man named Rick Kowalowitz. Do you know this? Do you have any comment, and how does this relate to what you're trying to get done?
I believe Rick's was rejected. Yeah, his lawsuit.
Is it over? He filed in federal court. His lawsuit was in federal court. He has another lawsuit regarding his signage and whatnot in state court when he ran for office, but his federal court was dismissed for lack of jurisdiction or issue a remedy, and the Fourth Circuit Court denied his appeal.
Okay,
So he has no federal
could you
seat standing.
just summarize that it's over with? All right, because
Yeah.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah, Rick's lawsuit didn't go very far.
I do have another question, or it's a statement really, that it's inherently imbalanced to have 3 special districts that are elected at large and 7 that are elected only in the district. That's a completely, it's not one man, one vote anymore. So
Yeah.
it's illogical and should be done away with.
And that's what the 10-1 district system voting did. Okay, again, this is a city that always brags about how much better they are than everybody else. And who do they decide they want to look like?
Yeah.
The city that has wards and super wards. Really? You want to be a city of wards and super wards?
No.
No, okay. I just wanted to double check because that is what this city is trying to do. So,
Are there more questions?
Could I ask if John Moss could come forward? Please.
we're about finished, I think. I think this is pretty much
Just,
Yeah. Kathy.
yeah, we're 1 minute over. Just for the record,
Very, very brief.
just for the record,
We have 2 more questions.
my question is, when this referendum comes out, by state law, localities are prohibited by that state law of taking one side or another, promoting or opposing a referendum and the language. Most people don't realize this, and you got to watch carefully on the city and the city council on the words that are convening this referendum, right? Is that correct, John?
They're allowed to have 500 words, which is the same thing they're allowed for state constitutional amendments. And you don't see the state spending any money on that other than a few pamphlets that they have. They're allowed 500 words. And also the senior court, circuit court judge has to approve the wording, which I have to admit I had a big part in making them change, because it was wrongly worded. And then that's how it works. They can spend any amount of money, unfortunately, communicating, but they can't communicate except those 500 words. Now, each individual council member is free to go out on their own dime and have their view, but they can't. That is in fact the law, and that's how it works. And the senior court judge has to approve the ballot question, and then he issues an order that puts it on the ballot to the electoral board.
Thank you.
And we have 2 other questions. We'd like to put them in.
Don't let him go.
Yeah, I just want you to keep hearing you talking about wards, super wards, districts. Define for me the difference between a district and a ward, super ward system.
Okay.
Give me back the mic.
Okay. This is what a ward in a district, that term is the same. People think that ward sounds more pejorative because no one says we have a congressman from the 2nd Ward of Virginia. They say the 2nd District. So they generally attach ward to Chicago-style politics, which is not the best. And nonetheless, so it's more pejorative, they like that word. So it's not designed to be complimentary. Now, super ward means Norfolk didn't want to have at-large voting because they couldn't meet the Voting Rights Act requirement with that. They would have had to go to more individual wards, which they didn't want to do, but that would further diminish the power of the institutional players. So what they did say is, we're going to have 3 wards, say districts, and then we're going to draw these other 2, because I think they have a 5-member. So then to get the voter rights, they had to draw what they call super wards, which would encompass a ward and part of another ward, and then a ward and another part of another ward. So you have a super wards, because everybody wasn't voting for everyone, so it has to be a ward, but it's bigger than the little ward, so it's the super ward, like it's 7-Eleven, the super train.
Big goal.
You get 4 more ounces.
Yeah.
But so that's what they had to comply with the Voting Rights Act. And believe it or not, they didn't have to change the Norfolk Charter for that federal lawsuit because why? The supremacy clause. We had poll tax on the books of Virginia long after the Supreme Court had ruled poll tax were unconstitutional. Did that make that law go away on the books? No, not until they passed it. But did that law have any legal effect? No. Same thing with the city's charter. If a federal court rules, well, the charter never changes. The court ruling on the supremacy clause takes precedent, and that's what happened. So all this charter water stuff really is makes it sound like people are losing something that they're entitled to, rather than saying that people are being prohibited from having something that the law says and the judge says that they are entitled to. The charter is just words. What counts is where in the hierarchy is that decision made. The General Assembly could change it, a federal court could change it. And whatever they change it to, the charter isn't that demanding, but what the circuit court said was the city council, didn't say the General Assembly, didn't say a federal court, it said city council didn't have the power to implement 10-1, and since the court had been, if this judge had never dismissed that case, which they voluntarily agreed to, that court case couldn't have happened. But because the federal court case was dismissed, the city council no longer had any judicial ruling that supported the 10-1 system, and therefore they didn't have the power to implement that system. But now the judge, since they broke their word, what did he do? He opened the case up, which now we're back in federal court. It wasn't a smart move to go to a referendum, personally.
Yeah, that's it. This is the last one.
Could you come back here so that people can see?
Costs $4.
Hey, John, can you just stand for a minute because you kind of answered a lot of my concerns with the city charter. I've been reading it and it's real convoluted to me. It seems to me that the charter has trumped what the federal courts have said, what the citizens have said. My question is there any type of process to amend the charter? Or what is the process of amending the charter so that it complies with court orders, so that it complies with voters? Can you kind of expound on that for me?
I will. And this is nuance. And this is, unfortunately, the city council through the city attorney should really be having this dialogue with the whole public.
Absolutely.
Because their job is to educate the voters. And they are not doing that.
Amen.
So let's just walk back. Decision made, right? Then the federal court said, because of the Voting Rights Act and the Fowler Amendment both, made the current system in the charter, the one you saw, the legacy system, not viable, not legal. The court case that you filed was against the all-at-large system. Well, the all-at-large system was made illegal by, you forget the federal court, was made illegal by those two General Assembly acts. So therefore, the original litigation was no longer valid. So we called the case moot. But the Fourth Circuit, being wise, not knowing what the council might do, preserved the litigation of the plaintiffs to go back and reactivate their case, so they never ordered in their decision that the circuit court judge dismissed the case. So their case was like in purgatory or dormant, but was still, their rights had been preserved, right? So we go and have the election system. Then the city's really wanting this suit to go away, because I think you had all spent about $4 million on your lawsuit. In all fairness, good stewardship, we only spent 1.5. But in all fairness,
We had the best lawyers.
but because the case was moot, they had no right to get paid. So that was the big issue for us, is we didn't owe anything. That's good. So now what happened, and getting back to your point, but when the plaintiffs voluntarily agreed to dismiss the case because the city entered this memorandum with the court that they would what? Adopt the 10-1 system, and they would go to the General Assembly and ask for it to be approved, they then dismissed the case. So now you no longer have any open case in federal court. It's over. So what does the city council have? The city council really doesn't have any judicial now support for the 10-1 system from a federal court, because the case was declared moot. But the city agreed that they would advance it. And the General Assembly was in no eager thing, so when the lawsuits was filed, the governor's point was, well, since there was something in active litigation and he wanted some changes, they wouldn't agree to them, then nothing was done. But so far, the city's done what they said they would do, right? They said they would adopt an ordinance, which they did. They said they would ask the General Assembly, what they did. So then they go round 2 in the General Assembly, nothing happens, not even something to get to the governor's desk. But then the city, I think motivated by things that took place in the election plus some, they said they were going to ask the people what they wanted. Well, that means you're no longer actively supporting 10-1, which you agreed you would do, which is why Judge Jackson said, if you break your agreement, then I'm vacating the dismissal. So now, Ms. Holloway and Georgia Allen now have an active case. The case will not be about 731, the legacy charter. It will be about whether or not 731 can be as effective in providing minority political efficaciousness, that's the word of, I think, the Voting Rights Act, as the 10-1 system. So now, this won't be decided by the General Assembly, but until they do what? They're going to have to draw districts. Because right now, the judges told them, circuit court judges, you can't have 10-1. We'd have to get a reissue from the court ordering 10-1, which is what I'm sure you're all looking to do. But the city's going to have to, because of the state law, they'll be having to be the advocate now for 731. And what I'm hoping, I hope they're thinking that if the public says 10-1, they'll have a reason to say, well, we're not going to put forth 731, we're going to defend 10-1. But I don't know what they're going to do. But my point being is, the referendum will not resolve the issues. People need to realize, whatever happens in the referendum, the last word is going to be in federal court.
Can I say some here? Can I do a cameo appearance? Okay.
That answer your question?
It absolutely did.
Okay, Mr. Moss and Ms. Al, thank you. I have one very leading question, which is, should the federal court decide that 731 violates the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and that decision is in conflict with the state court decision, who prevails, the federal court or the state court?
Decided long ago, the supremacy clause states Constitution, federal law, work down. If the federal law prevailed,
Federal.
we probably wouldn't have integration.
Correct. All right.
Georgia, I have a closing comment online from Chris Taylor.
Okay.
Chris stated, I was in court on Monday. Chris Taylor is a former city council member. I was in court on Monday for the hearing. The city will have a very hard time redrawing 7 single-member districts that comply with the federal court's opinion. And then he goes on to say, closed session is the avenue to sidestep transparency.
I agree. Virginia Beach City Council and some of the people, they've been bored.
Yes.
And so that makes a bit of a challenge. But as was said by former Councilman Moss, the city could be indebted for another $4+ million, and however many more millions that this lawsuit may cost. And I say that to all of you because you, like me, we believe in being good stewards. $4 million could clean up some of this mess in our city, okay? They've already paid a couple of $1 million out of their own pocket for defending or being a defendant in this case. But again, I had excellent attorneys. I mean, my attorneys were from Boston to Miami to, they were all under the same umbrella, but they were around the nation, okay? And these were some sharp, young people. And if anybody has pulled up any videos or anything on that lawsuit and listened to how our attorneys cross-examine the city's attorney, the city witnesses and all, it was clear that the city witnesses, they were not experts.
Yeah.
It was very embarrassing. I mean, I'm sitting there and I'm embarrassed at the people that they had that they considered were expert witnesses. So I'm fine with the people that I have defending me as a plaintiff, and I hope that all of you who are sitting here who do not like your money wasted, call your council members and say, hey, I know you have people with their hands, or you have your hands in their pockets and they're giving you money or whatever, but it is not worth that type of cost in order to try to preserve a voting system that is not good for all of the citizens. Again, it's one person, one vote, and this is what we have now. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. We appreciated that very much. I'm glad we got a remark from Chris Taylor because he and John see eye to eye when they're both standing up, and also with his lady when they're all sitting down. So I'd like to say thank you very much for coming and listening to this complicated mess, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Announcements.
Oh, I'm sorry. Announcements. Here we go.
I have one too.
Tom
Veely.
Okay, now I just wanted to let you know that our next Tea Party meeting is this coming Thursday, July 10th, and we have Gary Porter, who's a constitutional conservative, that is going to be speaking on things that are going on now, like executive orders and stuff like that. So, if you would like to come, it's at 7 p.m. at the Masonic Lodge, 2849 Princess Anne Road, right down the block from the courthouse.
Thank you, Diane.
Tom Veely.
Tom, you have something to say?
I do.
912 has their next meeting the 28th of this month. It will be at 6:30 at
Bonefish.
Bonefish Grill. Yeah, Bonefish Grill. We'll be discussing a video from Hillsdale College, and we would appreciate it if you come. 6:30, Bonefish Grill, the 28th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Anyone?
Okay.
Very well, so
Motion
now I will-
adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a vote to cast. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? I'll see.
Thank you.
You can stay.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for
Bye-bye.
listening.
I forgot to say thank you for the invite, so I do apologize.
No, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So much